What is up, YouTube? It is me, Topher Crost, here to do the deck profile you have all been waiting for. That's right, here it is, my third Dark Magician deck profile. This time with a very special guest that you've probably seen in the thumbnail and have been waiting for me for forever to get, and that I have been waiting for forever to get. So without further ado, let's get into this deck. Before I get started, I just want to say this is a 40 card deck with a 15 card sideboard. Got some fusions in there and everything, so... Here, a little squeak in the back of my chair. I apologize. I'm doing this at a weird angle, so just bear with me. I appreciate that. All right, so we're gonna start off this little thing with 1, 2, 3 Dark Magicians. Of course, you want to play 3 Dark Magicians in a deck that is built around Dark Magician. These cards are your resource. They do pretty much everything for you in the deck. You need them for pretty much everything that goes on in the deck. Now, I have a few ways to, just a few cards in the deck just in case you can't get Dark Magician out that first turn or that second turn, because this deck, I would say, is about 92% chance you're going to have Dark Magician out on your opponent's turn, on your opponent's first turn or your opponent's second turn. So I'd say about 92% when I did my deck tests. So 3 Dark Magicians, definitely want to play them. And now, for the moment we've all been waiting for, 3 Apprentice Illusion Magician. That is right, 3 of this wonderful lady. She is probably the best Dark Magician support in terms of monster cards for Dark Magician. So, basically what she does, if you don't know, is you discard a card from your hand and you get it, and you can special summon her just like you would the Tricky, and you get a Dark Magician out of your deck and into your hand. So it's basically like a illusion magic, except in the form of a monster, and you only get 1 Dark Magician. But then the effect gets better. If it is in your hand or on the field, either or, you can send it to the graveyard when one of your dark spellcaster type monsters gets attacked, and she allows you to boost that monster's attack and defense by 2,000. It's basically like an honest, tricky for Dark Magicians that helps you get 1 in your hand, so that's really good. Always run 3 of her if you have 3 of her. I know not everybody has 3 of her right now, but as soon as it gets a reprint, run 3. It's an amazing card. Next up, we have 1, 2, 3. That's right, don't think I was running 2. 3 Magician's Rod. This card lets you search for a magic or trap that specializes in Dark Magician. Anything that says Dark Magician in the text, as long as it is normal summoned. So have your fill with that card. I always run 3 and play out my draw cards and then play Magician's Rod so I can get that 1 Dark Magician card that I need. Often with this deck, it's so good that I end up just searching for Magician's Circle or Dark Magical Circle with it because I already have all the other cards in my hand. So that's how I end up doing that. Almost forgot to mention, I just put them back out, that they have a grave effect. If you activate a spell or trap on your opponent's turn while these guys are in the grave, you can recycle them to your hand by attributing a spellcaster type. I almost forgot to say that, and I'm glad that I didn't. But anyway, let's get on to the next monster, which is Magician of Dark Illusion. I am running 2 in this deck. I usually run 3 in most of my deck profiles, but the way it was going, I was drawing him just a little too much in my hand. He's so easy to get out with Magician's Navigation and stuff. It was either you ran 3 of him and 2 of Apprentice Illusion Magician, or the other way around for this deck. And I decided to run more of Apprentice Illusion Magician because she's more useful at the beginning of the game. And Magician of Dark Illusion is basically there so you can get your rank 7 XYZs out. Its effect is really cool, though. Basically, while it's on the field, it is also considered to be a Dark Magician. Its first effect allows you to play it if you activate a spell, trap, or effect on your opponent's turn. So you can play special summon it right from your hand on your opponent's turn, which is really good. And it also will trigger Dark Magical Circle, just so you know. And the last effect is if you activate a spell or trap card, you can reborn a Dark Magician. That effect can only be used once, but it's still a really good effect to bring Dark Magician back from the graveyard. So run 2 of him. You will pretty much get him out every game, even at 2, so don't worry about that. Next up, 2 Chocolate Magician Girls. This is part of your draw power. What she does is once per turn, if you would like, and you have a spellcaster type monster in your hand, you can send it to the graveyard to draw a card. And if your opponent declares an attack against her, you can bring back a spellcaster type monster from the graveyard the attack switches to the monster that you pulled from the graveyard, and the monster that is attacking attack points gets cut in half. So basically, you know, use her, have a Dark Magician in your hand, put it in the graveyard, then, and it's just an example, put it in the graveyard, and then when somebody attacks, you can pull your Dark Magician back up. If you have a Dark Magical Circle, it makes the play so much better. But you only need to run 2 because she is searchable by my next card. Summoner Monk. Great, great monster, especially if you're having a hard time. Got some extra spell cards in your hand, you're having a hard time really getting into anything. You can use her to pull chocolate out and get a couple of draws in, and then as soon as you're done with that, you can XYZ summon with him and Chocolate Magician Girl to get some good XYZs out. His effect is basically when you play him, he goes into defense mode, you discard a spell card, and you can special summon 1 level 4 spellcaster type monster from your deck. So very, very, very handy card. Always run 2. So far, this is just the number that's worked out for me. Some people run 1, and I think it's illegal to run 3. So next up is my last monster in this deck, Palladium Oracle Mahad. Basically just a good draw if you're, you know, towards the end of the game or you're having some issues. You draw into him, you can special summon him to the field, and if anything happens to him and he gets destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a Dark Magician straight from your hand, deck, or graveyard. And if he battles a dark monster, his attack gets doubled to 5,000. So he's just a great card to have, but you don't want to have him in your beginning hand, and if you run 2, I've had problems getting where I get him in my hand a lot. And just something I wanted to mention real quick that I find funny is Apprentice Illusion Magician is supposed to be the apprentice to this guy, and she doesn't help him at all because he's a light type monster. Only light type monster in the deck, the rest of them are dark spellcasters except maybe a Chocolate Magician Girl, which I think is water. Anyway, that's all for the monsters. Next up we go into the magic cards. Oh, I'm sorry, spell cards. It's Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm sorry. Bam! 3 Dark Magical Circles, because why would you not play 3 Dark Magical Circles? This card is amazing. When you play it on the field, you get to look at the top 3 cards of your deck, and if there's a Dark Magician card among them, or Dark Magician spell or trap, or a actual Dark Magician, you can put it in your hand. And after that, once per turn, every time you special summon a Dark Magician, its effect triggers, and you can banish any card on your opponent's side of the field unless their effects say otherwise. But that is an amazing card, and it is so helpful. Always run 3. Always want one of these guys in your opening hand if you can help it. But if not, there are a lot of cards to search for magic cards. But still, always play 3. Great card. Great card. I think next we are getting into some of the draw power with Pot of Duality. So why do I play Pot of Duality, you ask? Well, a couple reasons. One, Pot of Greed is still banned. That's the big one. But it lets you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, and you have to reveal them, and you get to pick one and put in your hand. Now, the only downside to Pot of Duality is, well, 2. One, you can only use it once per turn. The other downside is that no monsters can be special summoned on your turn, but unless you have Apprentice Illusion Magician in your hand, you won't be special summoning on your first turn with a Dark Magician deck, so you don't really have to worry about it too much. And if you do have a Apprentice Illusion Magician, just discard Pot of Duality. There you go, bam. But it's a good card to draw into if you're having issues later in the game, so definitely keep 3 of those. And here's my other draw power, Allure of Darkness. So I play a lot of Dark Spellcaster type monsters, and Allure of Darkness, if I can get it out here, allows you to draw 2 cards as long as you banish a dark monster from your hand. Very, very good, especially if you open up with a lousy hand with a bunch of dark monsters you can't play. It's pretty good, and I tend to need it, so I started running 3. 3 seems to be okay for me. Some people say I should only run 2 because of the amount of dark monsters I actually play in the deck, but I've never really had a problem where Allure of Darkness has just been a bad pull for me. Sometimes I get unlucky with it, but I've never had, like, it's never been that card that's just destroyed the game for me. Especially when it comes to games like where I have like I'm stuck with a Dark Magician in my hand, I can't do anything, so I can draw 2 cards or something like that. It's really, 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 really helpful. But I decided to run 3, and even if it is stuck in my hand, I can usually get rid of it with like Summoner Monk or Apprentice Illusion Magician that let me use it as a discard to special summon or to special summon Apprentice Illusion Magician or level 4 Spellcaster. So it's never really been cumbersome. Next up is one Illusion. Oop. We almost got another card in there. I'm sorry about that. 1 Illusion Magic. I used to play 3 of these, but with Apprentice Illusion Magician, it makes it almost useless to play 3. The reason I still play 1 is if you don't have a Dark Magician in your hand, which is vitally important in this deck, and you don't have Apprentice Illusion Magician, more often than not, you will have a Magician's Rod in your hand. So you play Magician's Rod, and you search Illusion Magic, sacrifice the Magician's Rod to get 2 Dark Magicians into your hand. I only play 1 because it's searchable, but it is a great card. But if you have Apprentice Illusion Magician, I wouldn't recommend playing more than 1. Next up is a card that I never thought I'd play in a Dark Magician deck, but it has definitely helped me, Righetti. Now, this card helps me in a weird way because a lot of times I'm playing with decks that negate, so I use Righetti as the card that they negate, and then I play the card that I really want to play. But in the case that you don't play, or that you actually do get it off, it is a really, really, really nice card. So I always just play 1. I mean, it's only limited to 1, but I don't think I'd play more than 1 if it wasn't. It's just a really nice card to draw into. It can get you out of some issues, especially if the other person's board is stacked. Next up is Mystical Space Typhoon. I only need 1 of these. The reason I play it is I actually very rarely use it, but if a person gets an early game, for instance, Skill Drain, or, shoot, what was the one that doesn't let you summon monsters? Vanity's Emptiness? Empty Vanity? Something like that. You guys know the card I'm talking about. If they get one of those out, because I can't special summon any monsters, I use Mystical Space Typhoon to get rid of it. So that's basically the only reason it's in there. It's basically a quick, get rid of that one card that's stumping up my strategy. Or that, even if they get like a field spell out that's really helping them along, you can get rid of that really quick, and you can do it on either turn. So that's why I run 1 Mystical Space Typhoon. Next up is Eye of Timaeus. What Eye of Timaeus does pretty much is allows you to pull out a Dark Magician Fusion. You can only use 1 once per turn, but I only run 1 because if you run 2, you always get stuck with 1 in your hand. Eye of Timaeus always seems to show up when I need it. It's easy to just kind of pull out a Dark Paladin or Amulet Dragon with it, so it's good to play 1. You can play 2. I only play 1 because most of the time with the new format, you're going to end up using just 1 of your extra deck unless you have Link monsters, which I don't know if I'm going to use yet. So I decided to play 1 of Eye of Timaeus because I don't want to really draw into it all the time. But when I do draw into it, when I have a bunch of other cards in my hand, usually it comes in handy. One of my favorite combos to pull off still is to have Dark Magician and Magician of Dark Illusion out on the field together, and pop Eye of Timaeus, kill off the Dark Magician, play Dark Paladin, and then use Magician of Dark Illusion to get back my Dark Magician. Then I go to XYZ summon. You won't be able to do that in the new format unless somebody's got a Link monster that's helping you out, but you get what I mean. So play 1. It's definitely a good polymerization type thing, and it gets Dark Paladin out, which helps you negate some spell cards. Next up is Dark Magic Attack. I am running 1 now because I'm also running Mystical Space Typhoon. All it does is if you have a Dark Magician on the field, it destroys all your opponent's back row and field spells and pendulums and anything magic and trap card related, which is fantastic. And it's searchable by Eternal Soul and a lot of the other cards I play in this deck, so definitely, you always have to run at least 1. But I think it's a very, very good card. I used to run 2. I decided the Mystical Space Typhoon would be a little better in this deck, but I would recommend running at least 1. And it looks like I'm at my last magic card, which is Dark Magic Inheritance. Basically, if you have 2 magic cards in the graveyard, you can play this card, and you can also play this card on your opponent's turn. You banish the 2 magic cards, and then you get to search your deck for 1 Dark Magician, spell, or trap. Fantastic card. It's definitely helped me out. You don't really need more than 1 because more often than not, at the beginning of a game, you're not going to have more than 2-3 spell cards at most in your graveyard. But later in the game, when you need that 1 card and you're just really having trouble drawing it, you can use Dark Magic Inheritance and you can pull that card that you need at the right time. So it's a good card. I recommend playing 1, especially since it is searchable. So that's pretty awesome. Next, we are into the trap cards. We're getting to the end of the main deck, and the first trap card I play 3 of is Magician Navigation. This was my #1 pick for my top 10 Dark Magician support cards. Spoilers if you haven't seen that video yet. But basically what this card does is allows you to, if you have a Dark Magician in your hand, you can play that Dark Magician, and then you can pull one level 7 or lower Dark Spellcaster type monster from your deck. Now this effect has gotten a lot better with Apprentice Illusion Magician, because something I like to do if I have like Magician's Navigation and Eternal Souls on the field is use Magician's Navigation, pull out my Dark Magician, pull out Apprentice Illusion Magician, then her effect triggers, I pull another Dark Magician from my deck, and then I play Eternal Souls, and then get that second Dark Magician out. It's really, really good for setting up. You can also use it to get Magician of Dark Illusion to set up those XYZ plays and stuff like that. All great strategies to use with it, but the card doesn't end there, and that's why it's so great. If it's been in your graveyard for at least one turn, you can, if you have Dark Magician on the field, you can negate any spell or trap your opponent plays for the duration of the turn. So if it's like a Mirror Force, you'll get rid of it completely, but if it's like something like a field spell, you can cancel it for that one turn, which is really good. Vanity's Emptiness, I'm sorry, that's what it's called. It's called Vanity's Emptiness, and you can negate that for one turn, so you can special summon, but you want to keep it on the field so your opponent can't special summon. So just some strategies that I've used with it that I just kind of wanted to talk about real quick. Next up is another fantastic Dark Magician trap card that I run 3 of. Eternal Souls. Great card. Basically what it is Dark Magician monster born every freaking turn. So what it does is it makes it so all of your Dark Magicians aren't affected by spells or traps at all, your opponent's spells or traps at all, which is a great effect in its own. But it also lets you special summon one Dark Magician from your hand or graveyard a turn, and you can use it to search for Dark Magic attack and 1,000 knives. You play 1,000 knives, good for you, but you can use this to search for it. All of that is fantastic. The one problem is that it has one downside, and that downside is if it gets destroyed, so do all of your monsters. A good way around this card, though, since people were asking me, is one, I don't play it in this deck, but you can play Dark Magic Expanded, making your spellcasters immune to spell and trap effects till the end of the turn. So if that goes destroyed, go ahead and chain Dark Magic Expanded, and then you don't have to worry about Eternal Souls effect. The way I typically will get around it is if I know a card's coming to destroy it, I'll go ahead and throw out Red Eye's Darkness Metal Flare Dragon. I get the names confused. I'll show you the card later in my extra deck. And what it does, it can't get destroyed by card effects, so, you know, that's just kind of my way around it, and they lose 500 points for activating whatever card they activate. So, that's that. And last, for my main deck, a new card into the deck, Quaking Mirror Force, and I'm running 3 of them. Thank God they're not expensive anymore, since a new structure deck, since a new structure deck came out with them in it. So that's great. So basically what this does is, instead of like a regular Mirror Force where it destroys your opponent's monsters, it sets them face down in defense mode on the field, and they're not allowed to change battle positions. Unless your opponent likes to tribute summon, this card is so handy to have, and I am so glad whenever I pull one from my deck. It has saved me so many times, especially during slow games, where they summon all their field in one turn, and then I pop Quaking Mirror Force, and all their cards are face down, and there's nothing they can do about it, so I'll just sit there and build up my field and then take them out all in one turn. That's my favorite way to use Quaking Mirror Force, but there also is other ways. It is the best Mirror Force for Dark Magician decks thus far, in my experience, so I'm definitely running 3 of them. Alright, so now we are done with the main deck. Now we go into the extra deck, and I'm going to go over my fusions first, and then my XYZs, and why I use them. First off is Dark Paladin, a staple to Dark Magicians players everywhere. It lets you negate a spell card if your opponent plays it by discarding a card from your hand, and it also gets 500 attack and defense points for every dragon that's in yours or your opponent's fields or graveyards. Great card, especially against high-powered dragons. That's why I run 1. And it's also very good for spell negation, but it's a pretty easy card to get out with this deck. You won't get it out a lot, you won't use as much as your XYZs, but it is still a very handy card to have if you need it. Everybody knows Dark Paladin, though. And here we go with the next one, Amulet Dragon. Another great fusion card. Basically what this one does is when it is summoned, you can banish as many spell and trap cards as you want from both yours and your opponent's graveyard. Sorry, I have to see how much attack it gets because I always forget. I don't use it too often. Okay, that's right. It gains 100 attack for each of those spell and trap cards that you banish. So that's a really, really good effect. And my favorite effect, especially since it usually gets destroyed really quickly, is that once it's destroyed, you bring back a Dark Magician Actually, I think it's you can target any spellcaster type monster, in your graveyard and special summon it. I don't use this card very often, as you can tell, because I'm not super familiar with its effect. But when I do use it, it's because I need a power play. And it has saved my butt on quite a few occasions. I just don't use it as much as Dark Paladin, because usually if I'm using Eye of Timaeus, it's early game. Next, we get into the XYZs, and I'm going to start off with the XYZ that everybody should be playing, the best XYZ for this deck in my opinion, Apprentice Illusion Magician. Basically, this requires 2 level 7 spellcaster types, aka Dark Magician and or one of the random Dark Magician illusions that you have in your deck. Basically, what this does is you can summon 1 normal spellcaster type monster from your deck by sacking an XYZ material. Also, if a normal spellcaster type monster declares an attack, you can banish a card on your opponent's side of the field. Very, very quick XYZ to get out, very amazing, and is so good for Dark Magician decks. Literally the best card, in my opinion, when it comes to extra decks for Dark Magicians. Very, very good. Next up is Ebon High Magician. His effect is essentially, again, 2 level 7 spellcaster type monsters. Basically what he does, to kind of summarize his effect, because I don't know the actual words off the top of my head, is he lets you play traps and quick play spells straight from your hand on your opponent's turn, which is really cool because they can't get rid of them ahead of time. So if you're having like one of those games where you need to play that Quaking Mirror Force from your hand, and you don't want your opponent to destroy it or have a chance to, there you go, just play Ebon High Magician and just wait. Now I only play 1 because out of every duel that I've played, I've maybe used him twice. So he's not too great, but you always want to have 1, you know, just to be able to adapt to a variety of situations, which is what I use my extra deck for, is basically to adapt to a variety of situations. Next up is Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon. I always get that confused. This card is probably it's probably the second most used XYZ in this deck. Basically, what it does is you can, for Dark Magicians at least, you won't be able to use the second effect, so I'll just go over the first one. But for Dark Magicians, you basically, I always fuse into it during your second main phase, or XYZ into it during your second main phase. Basically what it does is every time your opponent activates anything, they lose a card, effect, magic, it doesn't matter, they lose 500 life points. Very, very good, especially for decks that just won't stop playing shit. But this card is a great answer to that, and I play 2 because just in case one gets destroyed, and that's my end game, I want to have another one. I've never had to use 3. On certain cases, I've had to use 2, so I've always ran 2. Also, it can't be destroyed by card effects. Like I said, this was the card they used to get around Eternal Souls. Next is number 11, Big Eye. This is 2 level 7 spellcaster, or 2 level 7 monsters, not spellcaster. It's part of the numbers. I forget they're not typically archetypal, but basically what it lets you do is take one of your opponent's monsters away from them and control it for forever, so change of heart, except for forever. And the downside of this card is that it can't attack after you do that, but typically if I play this card, the monster that I'm taking has higher attack points anyway, so basically that's what this card's for, is just to adapt, again, to one of those situations. Alright, so I have 2 cards coming up now. I'm going to play them at the same time because they are both used for basically the same reason, is Naruto the Moral Leader and Photon Strike Bouncer. So you can go into early game level 6 XYZ summons. You can early game, if you get 2 Apprentice Illusion Magicians out, into one of these if you want to and you know your opponent's about to play something big. One is basically for negating monsters, Photon Strike Bouncer, and one is for negating spells and traps. So you have to switch in between them depending on who you're playing. If someone's using more monster effects, you want to use Photon, and if somebody's using more spell and traps, you want to use Naruto. Sorry if I said that wrong. But they're basically for the same use, just different cards, so I wanted to show you those at the same time. And they're the only level 6 XYZs I have in the deck. Not really too much of a use to have more. Be nice if Magi Girl came over, though. Next is Dark Rebellion XYZ Dragon, another powerhouse for this deck. If you just are stuck with that Summoner Monk Chocolate Magician Girl combo, you can get him out. Basically what he does is you sack the 2 XYZ materials on him, and he reduces one of your opponent's monster's attack into half, and then gains the remaining attack. So if your opponent's monster has 3,000 attack, He drops that down to 1500 and then takes 1500 attack. Just very, very good for getting around powerful monsters. Next up is Downerd Magician, excuse me. I've been using her a lot more lately. So if Dark Rebellion XYZ Dragon dies is typically when I use her, but her effect is really good. Basically, inflicts piercing battle damage and receives 200, I always forget the numbers, 200 attack for each XYZ material attached to her. The only thing is every time she gets an attack off, typically you have to, in most cases, get rid of an XYZ material. I actually haven't found a way around that effect yet, but it really doesn't matter because if she's on the field, it's only to either end the game or to just kind of keep me going for a little longer. Next up is Alchemaic Magician. I don't really think I've used her but once, and it's only to search for magic cards. That's all you use her for. It's 3 level 4 spellcaster type monsters, so you can use a double summoner monk combo right there to get her out. But if you do, you can search for pretty much any magic card you want from your deck, and that's why I use her. She never stays on the field that long, and I'm kind of gloss over her a little bit because I don't use her all that much. And last but not least for the extra deck, we have Castel the Sky Blaster Musketeer. Again, 2 level 4 monsters, and what it does is if you get rid of one XYZ material, you can put one of your opponent's face-up monsters into face-down defense position, they can't change. Or if you discard 2 XYZ materials, you can send a card back to his deck. So if he's got that blue eyes out in the field, you need to send that back to the deck. Just pull this guy out and, you know, discard the XYZ materials and put him back in the deck. So this is probably my most competitive deck so far. Let me get the other cards while I finish this outro. I mean, that's pretty much it for the deck. So get my Duck Magicians. Get my Duck Magicians up here. Yep. So this is basically my most competitive deck that I think I've ever made yet, and I'm actually going to take it to a tournament this Friday. Since it's my first debut of having Apprentice Illusion Magician in real life, I might make some edits to this deck. The good news is, if I do make edits to this deck, that means y'all are getting another deck profile here soon. So, that's also good. But, that is it for this particular deck profile. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Please comment below and let me know what you think of it. I love to talk to you guys. It's like my favorite thing to do. And if you do comment below, I want to trade out some strategies with you, because I know I'm not the only one that just got Apprentice Illusion Magician, but even if you don't have Apprentice Illusion Magician, it doesn't mean you have a bad Dark Magician deck. So, thank you so much for watching. Please share, like, and subscribe. I could really use the shares, the likes, and subscribes. I've been working really hard on videos that I've been editing more so I haven't been posting a lot, and it would really, really help if you shared my old videos. But besides that, y'all have a nice day. I really hope you enjoyed the deck profile, and enjoy your night. Topher Crost out.